Certainly as a fundamental prerequisite, you'd have to be able to demonstrate that at a minimum. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I mean, what we want as part of the challenge, and one of the reasons that I haven't come up and stood here today and said, this is what the people who came before you have thought of, do you agree or don't you agree, is the challenge very much wants to generate out-of-the-box thinking, if you pardon the cliche. So it's very much about saying, you know, we don't want to prescribe, we want to just prescribe something so that it makes it fair and equitable, but what we don't want to do is make it so prescriptive that everyone comes up with the same solution, because then what's the point? What we want to do is get some really novel thinking out of this and a contribution to the debate.
Hey, Paul, can I take another step in redefining? So I think the basic premise right now is given most corporate environments, you know, there are no borders to networks, and given the reality of the systems that we use right now, if I put them out on the internet, or even just functionally within our corporate infrastructures, there's a fair amount of risk. So the thinking is, let's create an environment that withstands a lot of scrutiny, and assume that there are no borders, that I could put all these systems out on the internet and they should function effectively. And so what's a typical baseline office environment? And I think that's the objective, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we want to achieve here as part of the challenge.
Yeah, it is certainly one of the things that's been looked at in terms of, you know, here I have a typical, you know, corporate Dell lab. It's about as boringly corporate as you can get, you know, Microsoft Windows, Dell, Cisco. But yeah, can this sit there here in Caesar's Palace, and can I access everything I do on a day-to-day basis inside the office without necessarily having to fire up a VPN tunnel to do it?
Yeah. So in my mind, given that, the things that I would be looking at is, so we talked about, you know, I need access to LAN, email, internet, and I need to be comfortable that they withstand a high level of aggressive attack, and at the same time that I can have, you know, the basic principles of, you know, confidentiality, integrity, availability, you know, scalability, reliability, all those kinds of things built in.
Are you building this with the assumption that there will be no borders?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there are no borders right now. But fundamentally, there are none in garden variety corporate environments right now. I mean, you think of, you know, a typical environment and who needs to access it. Well, I have employees, I have contractors, consultants, business partners, competitors that access my infrastructure right now. And fundamentally, most organizations historically have said, I trust my network, and the reality is you can't.
Is there a single corporation that we can point to that doesn't have borders?
Well, I think we've got to separate the two areas. I think you're crossing over two areas. There's the aspect of assuming that we've got no borders, that the systems could be compromised. So it needs to have the integrity stand up as if they were on the internet. So I think you're getting at the point that most corporations today do have borders, and so it'll be the issue of communication across those borders that's going to be part of the challenge.
Well, that's already been solved through, through security law, check bypass, all firewalls, put some over, and pretty much every single application we include, much like in Skype, is come over HTTP. So, and there are even SSL solutions that encapsulate themselves into HTTPS so that they will be able to process it.
That answers your question.
That's still an environment where you're living sort of in a borderless environment in the sense that you penetrate the borders,
Right.
but the borders are still there.
Right, so that's a good point, that we have to, whatever you define needs to be able to work in the environments that we see today. But it should be with the assumption that those borders will come down in the future and be able to prevent
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just add something? I mean, that's probably one of the best examples. If you just take Skype, as you mentioned, it penetrates the borders. That's part of the problems that are plaguing things today, is that you punch a hole in your firewall for HTTP. What's going through that hole? HTTPS. There's no telling what's coming through an HTTPS hole in a firewall. We can't control it. So you know we have that problem. So what if a company wanted to use Skype as the basis for its entire communication protocol? Well, we know that we can't use Skype out of the box because there's no remediation, no audits. If you're a financial organization, you can't turn around and say, well, we conducted all of our brokerage transactions over Skype, we have no records. The SEC will close you down tomorrow. But what if you took that and said, okay, here's the challenge. Take Skype, now make it a viable, scalable corporate solution that follows these tenets. That's the type of a challenge that we're looking for, is somebody to say, how do we solve the problems we have today as a business following these tenets, these 11 commandments? Right. It's
yeah,
just
but
one example.
what I'm hearing, going back to Bob's thing, is that, you know, if you want a typical business environment of what people do on a day-to-day basis, one of the things that people do on a day-to-day basis is make phone calls.
Right.
So maybe we want to add
some VoIP.
secure VoIP, where
Right.
whatever it is, into the mix.
Aren't we just trying to secure data, just fundamentally? I mean, it's about data security, period, right? Whether it's email, whether it's voice. And so on top of that whole, that platform, we need some open standard for data security that has audit trail, has appropriate access authentication, and can be handed out freely. And some open framework can be used to authenticate it and open it up and enable it. I don't really know how that, you know, constitutes a fair and realistic demonstration system, but it is just about the data.
It is about the data ultimately, but the problem is, has been pointed out numerous places in this conference. It's all about attack surface as well. So if you want to manipulate the data, you know, can I subvert the machine to do it? So do we need to do NAC? Well, that's an interesting question. You know, data at the end of the day on my control systems that run chemical plants. You know, yes, sure, it's the data we need to secure, but at the end of the day, we actually need to do some other security around making sure the process control system doesn't get subverted, so that the plant goes bang. Because it's very bad for the press when chemical plants go bang, so I'm told by my PR people. They don't like it. Yep. No, you're right. Sorry, at the back there. Yeah.
I have a question at this point. It sounds like, I mean, there's a lot of good discussion going on, but I think the question I have is what is the goal of the competition? I mean, you talked about, you know, creating, you know, an environment that defines a typical office, but I guess from, the higher level, from the perspective of Jericho, what is the point? Is it to, for example, demonstrate an architecture, to have an actual like implementation of an architecture that shows that you can implement an architecture that follows all of the commandments of Jericho?
Yes, and is corporately scalable. Because at the end of the day, you could design an architecture that follows most of the Jericho principles, as I said, just by putting IPsec tunnels everywhere and hardening everything. Is that corporately scalable? The answer is no. So yeah, it's good. I mean, the ultimate criteria is, yes, it follows the Jericho principles. Yes, it does these demonstrable things, and these demonstrable things is what we're trying to draw out of people. But ultimately, the acid test for the judges is, will this scale? So, you know, could I take this and could I scale it into my corporate environment?
Would it be prudent to actually define maybe, or just provide a list of business problems in which the solution would be there to solve? Not necessarily from, you know, this particular technical widget, however, but you know, is it an ERP? Is one particular problem that needs to be created and how individuals connect to it? Is it VoIP for multiple communications? I mean, there's a couple of very fundamental functions that the businesses would really want, which actually gives you multiple options of creating a solution for.
Yes, go.
I would say to that, build on that and say that I think that there's certain common problems that are
Yeah. Sorry.
So what is the effect that companies are going to do? Are they going to pressure vendors to, write good code? Or
Well, I personally have, like any good security person, I have very strong opinions about things. But where we've actually altered certain networking devices in order to provide application level security, at the end of the day, the application needs to be able to protect itself as a primary method of defense. We can go down the OWASP model or everything else in regards to discussing the various areas of attack models over an application, what needs to be done. But I think it's very important for all vendors, I mean, us being one of them as part of the role that we have, but also the vendors that we leverage, be it Cisco, et cetera, who are they, to really ensure that they are actually implementing secure coding methodologies to create secure code. I think over the past couple of years, specifically the past 3, you see a lot of reinsurgence of this. And I say reinsurgence because the individuals over the mainframe errors 30 years ago could tell you how to do a buffer overflow. They're actually implementing a lot of very good methodologies, specifically over government and financials. It's not the here-all and end-all, but it's a very good start of where security needs to go as far as an area that's been sorely overlooked for many, many years.
Is the adoption of the deeperized network relate directly to the application-based security?
I think it's very critical. I think without that, what's the point?
It's safe to say that until all applications are secure, we cannot really
Well, actually, what I like to say here is actually the application, obviously, it does require to be built with a secure architecture in consideration. But part of the challenge here is that the way the business is moving is basically today, we're all constrained within a corporate environment, and every user will have to go through the corporate arrangement and then talk to the business partner. In my view, where the business is going, they really want to basically to say, in a position to say, I have a computing device, and I want to now